In German, there are 4 sentence structures and word orders. Understanding why German sentence structures behave as such will help understand why German has many structures in the first place. A complete sentence is made out of a subject noun and a conjugated verb, so it's something or someone that is doing. These sentences are as standard as they get, and they follow the subject plus verb word order. The most important words in any sentence are nouns, both in English and German. While English has a fixed sentence structure, German sentence structures are constructed through many word orders, and it's very significant to understand the correct order and placement of nouns. Both in English and German, there is a standard sentence structure, but German can deviate from the norm, so we need to understand why it does that. Check out the sentence. The man gives the bone to the dog. We know exactly who is giving what and to whom, but if we change the word order, the meaning will also change in English. But German has more sentence structures that have a relatively flexible word order because other grammatical elements, like cases, communicate who is who and what is what in any sentence. The purpose of cases is to convey the function of a phrase without relying on other contexts, thereby using less words and giving more information. For instance, in German, we can say, the man gives the bone to the dog in 3 different orders, all while keeping the same meaning in every sentence. Der Mann gibt den Knochen dem Hund. The man gives the bone to the dog. Dem Hund gibt der Mann den Knochen. To the dog gives the man the bone. Den Knochen gibt der Mann dem Hund. The bone gives the man to the dog. While the first sentence makes sense, the English equivalents of the second and third either change the meaning or become nonsensical. In German, this concept works, and it's common to see alternative sentence structures because grammatical elements, like cases, provide enough information. When trying to understand this in English, we'll come across many strange sentences, so we have to know German sentence structures. The first step is to understand the standard sentence structure, both in English and German. The standard sentence structure is a default pattern, consisting of a subject noun, a verb, and a continuation. The continuation can be direct objects, indirect objects, prepositional phrases, adverbs, etc. While the continuation can be anything we say, in German, we will focus on nouns and their placements. In other words, the default pattern is a subject, a verb, and more nouns. Some examples are, I buy a present. I buy a present for Emma. I buy a present for Emma every week. Here, the big takeaway is the nouns and their placements. So in German, we need to understand the 4 types of sentence structures. The 4 German sentence structures are standard, inverted, transposed, and subordinated. But before I explain each one, we need to talk about 2 principles that support the standard pattern. It's valuable to know them because other sentence structures will break the standard rules. Principle number 1. The subject, which is the standard pattern in the nominative, must be next to the verb. Principle number 2. The verb must be in the second position in the sentence. These principles reflect the simplified standard sentence pattern. A subject, a verb, and more nouns. This is the standard sentence structure and its word order. So now we can see other sentence structures and how to know when to use each one. The second pattern is inverted, and it's mainly used when asking a yes or no question. The third pattern is transposed, and it's used to emphasize some element in a sentence. The last pattern is subordinate, and it's dependent, also known as a subordinating clause. That being said, let's expand every sentence structure. While the standard pattern follows the subject, verb, and more nouns, the second inverted pattern swaps the subject and the verb when asking a yes or no question. So, the word order in the inverted pattern is a verb, a subject, and more nouns. Some examples are Spielst du Fußball? Willst du gehen? Lernst du Deutsch? In these examples, the placement of nouns is optional because the inverted pattern affects the verb and the subject, meaning that an inverted sentence can be as simple as having just a subject and a verb. This is the second inverted pattern. The third, transposed pattern, transposes the nouns and subject. While the standard pattern follows a subject, a verb, and more nouns, the word order in the transposed pattern follows more nouns, a verb, and a subject. This pattern is more common in German, and it specifically emphasizes the more nouns element. Still, this is where it becomes nonsensical in English. Take a look at the sentence. Ich hätte meine Oma von Flughafen angerufen. I would have called my grandmother from the airport. This sentence is in the standard pattern, and it's fairly simple to understand. However, when we put it in the transposed pattern, we can transpose the word order while keeping the same meaning across every sentence. Meine Oma hätte ich von Flughafen angerufen. My grandmother would have called I from the airport. Von Flughafen hätte ich meine Oma angerufen. From the airport would have called I my grandmother. Here, we have two options in German because we have two more nouns elements, and we transpose them to the front of the sentences, thereby emphasizing them. Meine Oma hätte ich von Flughafen angerufen. This transposed sentence emphasizes that I would have called my grandmother, not someone else. Von Flughafen hätte ich meine Oma angerufen. This transposed sentence emphasizes that I would have called from the airport, not from somewhere else. Note that in English, we can still have the same emphasis by using the standard pattern and simply inflecting or accenting our voice to emphasize the more nouns elements. I would have called my grandmother from the airport. I would have called my grandmother from the airport. In the transposed pattern, our inflection or accentuation doesn't matter because the word order emphasizes the meaning for us. At the same time, we can use the transposed pattern with yes or no questions. Fußball, spielst du? Football, do you play? This sentence emphatically asks, do you play football, not some other sport? Gehen, willst du? To go, do you want? This sentence emphatically asks, do you want to go, not some other action. Deutsch, lernst du? German, do you learn? This sentence emphatically asks, do you learn German, not some other language? This is the third transposed pattern. The last sentence structure is a subordinate pattern, also known as a subordinating clause. While the standard pattern follows a subject, a verb, and more nouns, the word order in a subordinating clause begins with a subject, continues with more nouns, and ends in a verb. This pattern refers to a sentence where one subordinating clause depends on one main clause. Typically, subordinating clauses are introduced by subordinating conjunctions, like weil, because, das, that, ob, if or whether, and wenn, when or if. Also, they're separated by a comma in German, and the conjugated verb must go to the end of the clause. One example is when the subordinate clause is after the main clause. Ich bleibe zu Hause, weil es regnet. I'm staying at home because it's raining. Here, the subordinate clause starts with weil, and the verb regnet is placed at the end of the clause. In this example, the subordinate clause comes before the main clause. Weil es regnet, ich bleibe zu Hause. Because it's raining, I'm staying at home. Here's another example with the conjunction das. Weiß, dass sie heute kommt. He knows that she comes today. Das introduces the subordinate clause, and kommt is at the end. Respectively, the more nouns element can include a direct object in the accusative, an indirect object in the dative, and nouns that are prepositional phrases in either the accusative or dative. Sometimes, instead of using more nouns, we can use more verbs, which can include infinitives, past participles, or separable prefixes that are common in German. Both more nouns and more verbs are flexible in German, so it's good to know them as a part of the standard pattern, like in the sentence, Der Mann will den Kuchen essen. The man wants to eat the cake. Here, the more nouns element of Kuchen and the more verbs element of essen are swapped, because the emphasis is on Kuchen. Nonetheless, the word order is in the standard sentence structure. Essentially, English and German both have the same standard pattern, but German can switch the order of more nouns and more verbs, which is a crucial difference. Overall, this is how sentence structure and word order work in German.